Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Engine Room Podcast, brought to you by TokenMetrics.com. My name is Dylan Love, and I'm joined by three fellow crypto wonks to help you make sense of what's going on in crypto. As always, we've got Bill, our chart wizard, Jacob, our NFT guru, and we definitely got to give a mention of Stephen Tuttle, who is a new face on the podcast these days. Stephen, talk to the people. What's your story in crypto, and what gets you excited in this space?
Hello, everybody. I am a new employee at Token Metrics. Started out actually listening to Token Metrics as an Amazon delivery guy for about 1.5 years, where I had basically 9 hours a day to listen to crypto every shift. So I downloaded a lot in the brain, and now I'm very happy to be working crypto full time. And I now have an audience to connect with to talk about crypto. So I'm excited for all this, guys.
So let's jump right into some news, because we're in this weird nebulous period between Christmas and New Year where a lot of things get out that either matter a lot or don't matter at all. One of these things is that Ray Dalio is back. We talked about Ray Dalio last week on the podcast. He is now out saying that there is a limit to how high Bitcoin can go. A lot of the maximalist crowd likes to talk about this hypothetical far-off future where Bitcoin is $1 million plus. I'll call out YouTube crypto influencer Andre Gique as being particularly offensive in this arena. He says, if you just hold a little bit of Bitcoin, you'll be rich in the future. I think it's preposterous. Now we have an esteemed hedge fund guy, one of the most successful in his area, Ray Dalio, who we know is into crypto. Although we don't know any details about it, he's slowly coming onto the scene in a bigger and bigger way. This time, it's kind of a punch in the face of the Bitcoin maximalists. This stuff isn't going to make you rich if you're just holding it long term, he says. What do we think about this, guys? I agree with him. While there is no theoretical thing limiting the price of Bitcoin from being infinity dollars in the future, we have an economy that it plugs into. So economic factors are really the thing that he's talking about here. Ray Dalio, smart, stupid on this? What do we think, guys?
I agree with his kind of idea that Bitcoin's not going to reach $1 million, but I don't agree with how he got to that idea, how he is forming his argument. So the way he's forming his argument is he's comparing it to gold. He's saying, well, gold, the amount of gold that's not used for jewelry purposes or central bank purposes that's floating around is worth around $5 trillion. And Bitcoin is worth around $1 trillion. So it's 20% the price of gold. And he says, I don't think it's ever going to pass gold. And that's what I don't disagree with. Or that's what I do disagree with, excuse me. I think that Bitcoin has more utility. I think because gold, all it is kind of a scarce metal. You can use it kind of for electricity, but it's just doesn't have the same utility that Bitcoin does, and it doesn't reach as many people as Bitcoin can. So I disagree with his idea that Bitcoin isn't going to pass the price of gold. However, I do agree that I don't think that Bitcoin's going to reach $1 million.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint any maximalists out there. We appreciate that kind of energy and those ideas, but it has to be balanced by reality.
Can I butt in for a second here? So I think a lot of these Bitcoin maximalists that think that Bitcoin is going to go to $1 million, I think a lot of them are influenced by specifically this book right here, The Sovereign Individual. And what this book says, it goes along with the Bitcoin maxi thesis that institutions and governments are going to be screwed in the future because Bitcoin is able to protect property rights without violence. That's their the calculation or the theory that they're most likely using in their head. And for this to play out, for Bitcoin to go to over $1 million, you would have to see governments and institutions basically bend the knee and start using Bitcoin. And you would also maybe have to see private sovereignties like private city states start to pop up, and also they use Bitcoin. It would be an entirely different world. A lot of stuff would have to happen for Bitcoin to go over $1
Yeah,
million.
libertarian dreams would have to come true, basically, is what it sounds like. I mean, Stephen, you're reminding me of this idea called seasteading, if that means anything to you. This is an idea that Peter Thiel is really into. Peter Thiel, now there's a walking contradiction of a guy. How many gay libertarian billionaires do you know? Not that I know him, but Peter Thiel was a very, very big proponent of this idea called seasteading, where you could basically set up a floating city that's out of every jurisdiction. You're your own god at that point. You can do whatever you want. This has been seen slightly in practice off the coast of England. There's a abandoned military base that was taken over by a brave British gentleman, and he founded Sealand. I have some Sealand stamps that I think are pretty cool. But I appreciate, I definitely appreciate that thought that it's a function of the government having to kowtow on some level. And we may see that happen yet. But I kind of want to throw it to Bill at this point, because if we imagine a hypothetical world where Bitcoin is actually $1 million plus, what's that do to the price of bread, Bill?
So this is a good question, right? Especially when you get these kind of statements from the guy that invented the macro hedge fund along with Soros. So foreign exchange is like a teeter-totter, right? Like, if the dollar goes up, the euro goes down. Or, you can also trade pairs, right? Like euro versus yen. So Dalio is just reminding everybody that, if you have Bitcoin at $1 million, what is the value of the dollar? Well, obviously a lot lower, right? That means a loaf of bread is $16, or maybe a gallon of milk is $16 and a loaf of bread is more than that, right? So, if you have, let's do it this way. If you have Bitcoin at 65K, which 5 years ago, people would have been like, you're crazy, except for the maxis, right? In Los Angeles, I read an article over the weekend that there's so much smash and grab shoplifting at luxury retail stores and so many doors getting kicked in high-end California suburbs that they're resorting to barbed wire, sandbags, and armed security guards. So if you look at what's happened to the purchasing power of the dollar with 8 to 12% inflation, hey guys, $1 million Bitcoin is like Mad Max for anybody who knows or remembers that, right? So it's like, all right, yeah, a sat's worth a lot, but can
I have to kill for gasoline.
I mean, it's like you got to roll in an armed convoy to go to the grocery store, right? So bandits don't get you. So I know people out there in crypto don't want morbid stuff. So, I also think with Dalio, there's like two other points, right? If you were a hedge fund manager, right, and you wanted to kind of let it out quietly, hey, I'm short Bitcoin. You can't come out and say, I'm short this shit. I'm done. You can't say that. You'll get run off Twitter. Right, but you can say, you know what? I just think these valuation targets are a little lofty. Right? So don't doubt that somebody out there is going to try to get short Bitcoin. And there are a lot of guys saying that Bitcoin winter is coming. So that's the other thing about $1 million Bitcoin that you have to think about. Like, let's say it did go there, right? You'd have to wash out a lot of buyers. Like, would Michael Saylor have to puke out his Bitcoin at 20K to just sort of like purge the market and get everybody bearish? Like, how bearish would people have to get, and how pessimistic would you have to be at the beginning of the rally for that type of a move to manifest? So it all fits in to be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, I hope to live long enough to see Saylor sell any fraction of the amount of Bitcoin that he has. That guy has made it so clear that he is thinking on a generational timeline. He loves to talk about how he isn't a trader. He's not in this for a quick day trade to make a buck. he literally calls it a technology play. So this seems to dovetail nicely with Steven's point about property rights. He's repeatedly called it digital property. So I don't know. Maybe at $1 million Bitcoin, that'll be the time that he starts to sell. But by then, it might be a Mad Max scenario. Who knows? Who knows?
Right. And I think for the sovereign thing, I think those guys are going to be right when you consider total crypto market cap. Right. It's not just Bitcoin that creates the sovereign individual, right? Layer 1, layer 0s, the connectivity of it all, Web3, which according to Elon Musk was dead or not existent. So anyway, yeah, that's the sovereign individual.
All he said was he couldn't find it, right? All he tweeted was that he couldn't find it. So he's not saying it's dead. He's just saying, show it to me.
All right. Well, that's, fair enough. I mean, you could have said that about battery powered cars the first 5 or 6 years he was in business, but okay, I got it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. He's meme lord Elon till the very end, and he's doing what he has to do to stay relevant, and he's very good at that. Anyway, let's move right along here, because one of the things that can definitely affect Bitcoin price going up is if it suddenly becomes a lot more scarce. And we were chatting right before we got onto this podcast that there's only 1.3 million Bitcoin left on exchanges. I understand that that's not a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's definitely not a lot. How are we interpreting this news, guys? What does 1.3 million Bitcoin left on exchanges actually mean?
Yeah, it's a bit of a conundrum, and I would like to hear Bill's opinion on this, because pretty much this whole year we have been seeing outflows of Bitcoin out of exchanges, and in correlation to that, we've also been seeing Bitcoin's price action look really favorable for holders. Bitcoin has gone up significantly within the past year. Now we are still seeing that scarcity at play, but we are not seeing as many buyers. Bitcoin is starting to tail off a little bit. Now, in my opinion, that is probably partially because of taxes and partially because of the idea of the halving cycle, which I think we're actually leaving. I don't think that the halving cycle is going to matter as much now that we have institutions on board and just way more retail. Bitcoin's price is higher. The selling from miners should not affect it as much. However, the mindset of the cycle is still there. We still have a lot of people still stuck in 2017 expecting the blow off top. We didn't get that. So I'd just like to hear some opinions about what we think. I mean, Bitcoin is still scarce, but there's just not as many buyers.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost, it almost feels like there's no interest. Like once the ETF came out, everyone thought that was the beginning of the glory days, and that could be a temporary end or a pause to the glory days, because equities retail is not. I mean, they've made a lot of money, but frequently they buy the top of stuff. I know they bought the top of all this like unprofitable software, ARK investment, or they bought the top of all that. So
come on, Bill, disruption is good. It's good to invest in disruption.
Well, yeah, it's good to invest in disruption, but not at the top, right? I mean, one of my colleagues like trade location in this environment matters. So, if there's no Bitcoin left on exchanges, okay, that's good. It means Bitcoin's price kind of has a floor to it, which we've seen. But really, I think it enhances the argument for altcoins, right? In other words, if there's a limited supply of one form of crypto, if somebody big actually wants to get involved, they may have to go buy something else. I mean, liquidity matters. Nobody wants to put money into an asset and be the person who bids it up and then has it fall all the way back after their orders are filled. So I think the fact that there's less Bitcoin may drive people to say, okay, well, what else is out there? Which if you saw the Santa rally in the layer ones, that may already have started.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what Stephen was saying earlier. For the only real way for Bitcoin to go to $1 million is for nation states and huge institutions, countries to adopt Bitcoin. But my thought is that they're not going to adopt Bitcoin. Yes, we saw El Salvador make Bitcoin its legal tender and one of its national currencies, but Bitcoin's just not that effective. It's still proof of work, so it's still bad for the environment. It's not the fastest cryptocurrency out there. I think that as nation states learn more, get more involved in crypto, they're gonna go maybe make altcoins national currencies.
Jacob, be
legal
careful, because
tender.
you've just very casually opened up a gigantic can of worms by talking about proof of work being bad for the environment. I don't exactly disagree with you, but there are a lot of people who would vehemently disagree with you. I want to call that out. I don't think you're saying anything controversial, but you did just kind of throw that in there.
I mean, yeah, I think I would not back down on that. I do think it's bad for the environment. Obviously, you can compare it to other things that are worse for the environment, like, oh, well, these big corporations are beating down on Bitcoin, but they're still supporting oil or fracking or whatever. It's like, yes, but that's kind of a logical fallacy saying, well, this isn't bad because there's things that are worse out there. No, it's still bad for the environment. I'm not saying we shouldn't use Bitcoin. I own Bitcoin. I trade NFTs, which are super bad for the environment, according to all the Democratic politicians out in the United States. But yeah, I do think it's not the most ideal crypto that a nation state could make a legal tender.
Yeah.
I think a major problem with Bitcoin as well is that it is stuck on its own island. Bitcoin is the first ever invention of digital scarcity. However, it's not interoperable with really anything. Um, Due to this, I actually think that Ethereum, and I think a lot of people might be realizing this as well, Ethereum might be the money of choice that people actually use. Whereas Bitcoin is money, it's the first ever representation of digital decentralized money. However, it just doesn't work as well as Ethereum does.
Yeah, I guess my
That
thought on that is I don't think Ethereum's going to be the choice crypto unless they can quickly transition to Ethereum 2.0 proof of stake, because right now the gas fees are just so high that it's practically unusable. And I think as time goes on, people are really starting to get annoyed with the gas fees. They already are, but it might get to a breaking point or a tipping point where people just stop using Ethereum because the gas fees are way too much. And that's when we see a third player come in and maybe take out both of them.
Yeah, quick shout out to our director of research, Forrest Purbish, who has made it very clear over the past couple of months that whoever can figure out the feeless game, the zero fee transaction game, whoever can do that, that's the entity that's going to succeed long term, and certainly next year, especially. Yeah, I feel you on the gas fees, Jacob. I'm not a large institution. I'm not buying 10 or 100 ETH at a pop, so I feel the gas fees.
Yeah.
I look forward to a time when I don't, but for all of us smaller cogs in the machine here, we feel that pain. Guys, you audience out there, I want you to continue listening or watching to this podcast to the end, because we're going to talk about our year-end predictions for 2022. But by way of quick reminder, you can help us grow this podcast by liking this video on YouTube, by subscribing to Token Metrics on YouTube, or by tracking down our audio podcast and listening to this in audio format if, let's say, you're driving an Amazon delivery truck all day. Gentlemen, let's get into what we think is going to happen next year. I'll start if that's all right. We have already talked in this podcast about 1.3 million Bitcoin being left on exchanges as being quite a small amount. I think we're going to continue to see the amount of crypto that's stored on exchanges drop. People are starting to understand what custody actually means. This idea of a custodial exchange was kind of people are waking up to what it means to not actually be able to hold your own keys. A lot of crypto topics are pretty niche, but this is beginning to become clear. People, if you have money in a bank, you want to be able to have access to that bank. And so I think people are going to start taking up their own storage options in a big way next year, and that will continue to send the amount of Bitcoin freely available on those exchanges down. Guys, who's next? What do you think is going to happen next year? Any big picture narrative stuff, or maybe you want to be as specific as to say something is going to zero?
Well, it's funny about a zero. It's an unusual number. particularly if somebody feels like something's going to go to zero, right? One of the things that I think has been left off all of the lists, like I've watched all the Bloomberg lists of, they have what's going to impact, what's the biggest tail risk for next year? I don't know, COVID, inflation, Ukraine, etc. Right? Nowhere on any of these lists is a currency crisis, which is hysterical because you had the Turkish lira implode this year. Venezuela imploded a long time ago, but we just had a NATO country have their currency blow up. So why is it that everybody in crypto, even though they don't like fiat, no one expects or thinks about kind of a dollar blow up? So wouldn't it be interesting if, say, Bitcoin went sideways for 6 to 9 months, right? Because it doesn't look like there's a case for it to go up a lot or down a lot. People in crypto have never seen, they've seen crypto winter, they've seen down and then sideways, but they've never seen up and sideways, right? So one surprise is Bitcoin in a range for 10 months while altcoins rally, right? And then, whether altcoins do or do not rally in October, the October surprise before the election is a problem with the dollar, right? In other words, what happens if politicians start handing out money or start making promises, right? Nobody thinks or nobody's talked about a connection between the dollar, crypto, the election, right? What happens if everyone crypto quote gets what they want and the dollar falls out of bed? And I think that's a Bitcoin revival and an Ethereum revival in October.
Yeah, Bill, we don't keep you around for good news, do we?
Well, folks, love, and this is what Dalio was trying to tell you, right? You can love crypto. Like when I do the market update, I got to give them the love. Otherwise, I'll frankly get tuned out, right? But in order for crypto to ascend to what everybody wants it to be, like, in order for people to take back their sovereignty, like what Steven said, right? Or in order for, Jacobson NFTs, in order for a new culture to emerge, right? Like moving beyond the patriarchy, right? Crypto has to evolve, and there has to be a reason for crypto to evolve. There has to be a reason for legacy investors to go, all right, well, I guess my FANG stocks are not going up 40% this year, and I'm tired of what's going on at the grocery store. It's time to get involved in crypto, right? Now, we would all wish that would happen organically, but, frequently you need seismic change in order to, end complacency and have a whole new trend, right? Like, wouldn't it be great if the American colonies broke away from England? That's a nice concept, right? Unless you happen to be a guy with a rifle who used to be a farmer with a rifle standing across from the redcoats, right? So something not so good needs to happen before something really good can happen, usually.
Gotcha. Steven, what's your prediction for 2022?
I would say I would actually agree with what Bill said when we were talking before this podcast. I'm most bullish on Layer 0, specifically Atom, the Cosmos ecosystem, and Polkadot. And I'm also bullish on something that is very similar to the idea of zero fees, Layer 0, distributed acyclic graphs. There's this project called IOTA, and there's a couple other projects that they're not blockchains, but they store their data in a graph format. It's way over my head, but the bottom line is that it is very low fees. And I think that these will most likely and most effectively be used in gaming. Right now, we're seeing no games yet, but we're seeing literally hundreds of gaming studios diligently at work making crypto native games. So my thesis is that these crypto games are going to be using very low fee networks. I also have Polygon on my radar as well for one of those networks, so that those games can get involved with Ethereum.
All right, very good. Jacob, what do you prognosticate for 2022?
Yeah, I'm thinking DAOs, and more DAOs. That's just I can't get over the power and the potential that DAOs can have. I mean, just yesterday we were talking about Blockbuster DAO, who
Yeah.
intends to purchase Blockbuster and create it into a decentralized film company. I tweeted about that, and in my tweet I said, who wants to create a DAO and do a hostile takeover of Citadel, the infamous hedge fund. I like, it's funny, but there's the potential. Like, we have Kraus House, who's trying to buy an NBA team. You have the Constitution DAO. This is really giving the power to the people, is a DAO. And if you have 100,000 members who each give 1 ETH, you can buy anything. You can buy major corporations. And if you just purchase up all their public stock and become a majority owner of the company, like, there's nothing they can do. And then you have a DAO. Like, it's just, I don't know. It's crazy to me. And I think we're going to see this narrative of DAOs really take off. We started seeing the first few. I mean, the fact that I can only think of 3 kind of major DAOs that aren't investment DAOs, but major DAOs that are trying to buy a company or etc. I think there's going to be a lot more. And
Yeah.
I'd love to lead that and take over Citadel. Then I might need to get the GameStop and Wall Street Bets crew in with me, and then we can really take over Citadel, as they call it.
Oh my God! Can you imagine the GameStop crowd collected in the DAO buying these meme stocks? Like, if the meme stock crowd became like a mutual fund, who knows what they would buy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. Everybody thinks. I mean, I know it's not good language, but I mean, our shitcoin's dead. So could the emergence of a DAO be like major big players start actually creating effectively the things, like they make their own pump, right? As if these DAOs collect themselves, no matter the quality of the instrument, if they really bid it up, this could happen in NFTs or metaverse. Right? If they really come in and bid up metaverse land, what can these guys do with all this power, right? And then I don't think the SEC, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, how does the SEC check a DAO, right? It's completely decentralized.
Yeah.
I guess that was going to be my question. Is, so you have an entity as a DAO. Let's say you have the whole GameStop crew. I know there's like a Reddit called Super Stonk, which there might be 1 million, 2 million members. I'm not completely sure, but let's say you have 500,000 members. They each put $100 or $1,000. That's what, 5 billion, if my math's correct. Can they just can they just take all that money and buy GameStop stocks? And
Sure.
Obviously that's going to create a crazy
If their
pump.
governance decides that's what they want to do.
Yeah, if that's what the governance decides, then will the SEC allow that? Like, is that legal? I'm not really sure.
How do you stop it?
Yeah.
I think if it's publicly traded instruments, I mean, I think the only way the SEC would get involved in that is somehow if the DAO voted to pump and dump stuff, right? If you had pump and dump, then that would be a problem.
But just to pump,
right? Just the pump part is totally legal, and
maybe a lesson for next year that we can put out now is beware an army of internet nerds that are as well coordinated as they are well financed, because there's going to be probably quite a few of them next year.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? They could all get together as a DAO. Can you imagine if Pomp took his newsletter or his Twitter, right? He's got 1 million on Twitter, right? Imagine if Pomp created a DAO for Bitcoin using his Twitter following. I mean, I know we just talked about it.
Bill, you're leaking alpha like crazy, man.
I know. So it's power. The people have to take some power back in 2022. It would be great if it was fun and not grisly.
Yeah. I'll drink to that. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Engine Room Podcast, brought to you by tokenmetrics.com. We'll see you for one more episode coming out this year, 2021. And then we'll see you for many, many more episodes after that in the year 2022. Happy holidays, best wishes, stay safe out there.